So good morning to one and all present here. A special welcome to our guests, Ms. Sonal Bessin, our HOD Dr. Bhavna Chanana, and our faculty and all my fellow students. My name is Jessica Pinto, and I am a student of ASFDT's batch of 2018 to 2022. We appreciate everyone who has joined for the session. Today, the CRC department and Amity School of Fashion Design and Technology, Mumbai, is conducting a guest lecture on emerging trends in interactive retail merchandising. So with facilities, classes apart, and holistic education, and faculties who encourage students to explore beyond, we at Amity School of Fashion Design and Technology, Mumbai, foster design leaders who are equipped to innovate rather than duplicate. So we were established in the year of 2015. Amity School of Fashion Design and Technology endeavors to nurture professionals who are competent and determined to excel in the field of design, fashion, and textile. Our vision is to educate and equip students with the potential to face life's challenges. Students need well-developed personalities for managing the growing demands of the day. It creates opportunities for training in real-life setting and contributing with innovation to the world of fashion. At Amity Fashion School, we have done professional guest lectures, webinars, as well as non-academic endeavors like Mega Model Hunt, which was organized by Ami Trends Club, Annual Style Q Conference, and Bombay Times Fashion Week Participation 2020. So, for our today's session, we are honored to welcome Ms. Sonal Bessin.
Okay, great. Okay, hi Jessica. I think I was saying hello to Mandeep also. I don't think she can hear me. Good morning.
I couldn't hear you, ma'am. Good morning. A very good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So are we waiting to begin?
Yeah.
We've already begun, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Hello to all the students. And a very good morning. Sorry, Jessica, did I interrupt you?
Yes, I'll just give an introduction about you. Yeah. So we welcome you, ma'am. Just a background. She has done her fashion technology graduate. She is a fashion technology graduate with over 10 years of progressive cross-functional experience in online and offline retail. Currently working as a deputy manager in merchandising at Trent Limited in the past 3 years. She has also had an experience at India's largest online lingerie brand, Pretty Secrets, as a senior manager in planning, and at Max Fashion India as a retail planner. We are so glad to have you, ma'am. And without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks a lot. It's a very interesting field of study, I would say, that all of you have chosen, fashion business. So I'm sure after passing out from school, we are all faced with these dilemmas as to which direction to go into. And so I was also there at some point, and I chose to get into fashion technology as a profession, and I would say that I've thoroughly enjoyed the last 10 years after passing out, and the 4 years of college were even more fun for sure. And so all of you are in the final year of fashion design and communication, as I understand. Can we do a small introduction of the students also, or should we start right away with the topics?
Yes, so the students are from 3 programs this batch. The fashion design, which is a 4-year B design program, where we have a majority of our students, and we have also students from textile product design, B design and textile product design, and we also have students from fashion styling and image design.
Right.
This batch.
Great. I am actually not able to see their names, so just when we are talking, I just wanted to be able to address people with their names. Do I not have access?
In the attendee list, if you can view the full attendee list.
I think let it be. I can see the panelists details, but I can't see the attendee details.
Ma'am, from if you can see down, there'll be participants. It shows 20 participants. You click on that, and there's a attendees list.
6 panelists and 21 attendees.
Yes, ma'am, you
Uh,
can click on that view full attendees list. It will show you names of students who joined.
Okay. I think it's not maybe working for me, maybe because my email ID is not from the organization. It's possible. Okay, anyway, that's okay. So we'll start. Uh, so to give you a brief about merchandising, merchandising is actually the whole process of once the product is made to delivering it to the customer. And it involves it's very closely related to supply chain if we talk about both online and offline. So from some companies decide to have one warehouse and put all of their stock there and then do the allocations for different channels. And some decide to have multiple warehouses and then do the distribution of their product. Now, the last 2 years have really redefined the whole scenario of business in almost every industry, and fashion industry is no exception. So when the COVID started to set in the December of 2019, I remember. So I'll just share a glimpse of my own experience of this whole COVID situation and how we handled everything, because I believe that is one major change that is going to happen in the coming years. And accordingly, the skill sets required will also need to be adjusted to that. So, yeah, in December 2019, when China was facing the COVID impact and there was a shutdown happening in few of the Chinese cities, the first impact was a supply shock. So, because a lot of the raw material, a lot of the fabric comes from China. And so, when we started to measure the impact on business, the expected or anticipated impact on business, it now sounds funny that it was somewhere around 10% that we had estimated that okay, the supply shock will lower our sales by about 10%. Come March 2020, and India goes into lockdown. So it went from a supply shock initially to a demand shock, because then the stores were closed for a very long time. There was absolutely no business. And so a very big part of merchandising is managing the money, because where does the cash flow get parked in a business? Majorly in product, in buying product. About 60 to 70% of the money is parked in buying the product. And with so much product already bought in, but no sales happening, everyone was trying to figure out how to handle this. And fashion is something that you can't even, had it been maybe furniture or had it been some other product, maybe 6 months down the line or the next year it could have been sold. But fashion is something that it's the time span for which you can really sell it is very limited. So if you have leftover stock of the spring summer 2020, you won't be really able to sell it without discounts in autumn winter 20, because firstly for our country the climate changes, and also then the kind of so the second half of the year, the autumn winter is full of festivities, so a different kind of ranges would sell. In spring summer people generally go for vacations, so a different kind of, and the weather is also very different, so a different kind of ranges would sell. So all of these exercises began where we were canceling orders, cutting down on the quantities, and trying to figure out without spoiling the vendor relations. Because of course, if you have to sustain in business, you can't spoil your vendor relations altogether. So you have to be careful as to not even, you know, uh, just send your vendors into a shop and then they don't want to come back because they don't know whether you're reliable, and in such a situation if you cancel all of your orders. So it was a very thin balancing act where you have to make sure that you don't even cut ends of your supply chain from the vendors, but also manage your own cash flow, because there was no money coming in. So if money is going out, if your orders are coming in, you have to pay your vendors. So these kind of challenges started to come up with the COVID situation. And then also there was this part of managing how to, so far, I work with Westside, and Westside is majorly an offline retailer. So we have stores and people come in and buy product from Westside. But during COVID, a lot of the stores had shut. So we had to reach out to the customers. So there were different ideas being explored. One of them being the store staff. So wherever the stores had opened, at least we were trying to. So we had taken out the customers list, the loyal customers who are enrolled in the loyalty programs, and we were trying to give them a video call and show them what ranges have come in, what new stuff has come in, and take down their orders and provide it to them. And e-commerce became a very big savior for everyone, whoever wanted to, reach out to the customers, because uh, people will people were also scared. The sentiment was very much towards fear of who would want to risk their life and buy clothes, right? So because coming into contact with other people, coming into contact with uh, going to a store would mean that you're touching things, and it opens up the risk of catching the virus. So there were these two challenges. One was managing the cash flow. Merchandising is majorly so OTB management is a very big part of merchandising. OTB meaning open to buy. So you have some money, you have some stock, you have projections for your future sales, and the leftover, the gap between the two is open to buy. And that is one important key area for a merchandiser to control. There are several levers using which you control the open to buy money. So these were the two things that were changing very rapidly because of the COVID situation. And I would like to also understand from few of you, how has your internship experience been, because you have also done your internship within the same time. So I'm sure you must be having stories that you can share with the rest of the batch to understand how things were handled in the company where you interned in. If anybody wants to share.
Just to my classmates, that we can either raise our hands or unmute or type in the chat box, and I'll read it out for you all. But I'll go first. For my internship, I worked with a really small business. Like, according to my family and all that, I should have worked or interned somewhere in a big company or something like that. But this internship was a big savior for me because I learned a lot about fashion business. And since I was working directly under my head, like my boss, she taught me everything from the local vendors to who's doing her dyeing of the fabrics to who's actually doing her embroidery and everything, even her cost sheets. And she was selling to these online stores. So how she managed with them, how much percentage she had to give them out of her pocket, and whatever her profits were, and how much she's like her cost sheets of her expenditure and how much she's spending, how much she's getting profits, how much she's giving her tailors to stitch and all that. So we literally went to one-on-one, spoke to the shopkeepers, like spoke to our darjis and everything. It was a great experience for me.
I'm sure. It's so yeah, even I worked for 5 years in a startup, and it's unmatched. The experience you get in a small business, and you see it scale up. It's one of the best learnings that you can get. And believe me, it wouldn't be the same if you were in a if you were a. So it's a big fish in a small pond compared to a small fish in a big pond. So that's the difference, and it definitely is a very enriching experience. I relate to what you're trying to say, Jessica. If anybody wants to share, I'll just wait for another minute.
Yes, students, please unmute yourself and you can speak to Sonal ma'am directly. Maybe so you can just go through the merchandising process and give them an overview and also tell them the scope of merchandising in the industry.
Sure. Just wanted to check that I am talking about retail merchandising, and I hope that the students are able to relate with it and it's not all blabbering for them, because everyone has taken out time on a Saturday morning. So I hope it's useful for you guys.
Yes, yes,
We
yes.
can
You
just
probably tell them the various merchandising, retail, visual, different types also.
sure. So I would start with merchandising is basically about planning and contingencies with those plans. So no plan is so perfect that you will not need course correction. That's from my 10 years of experience, that every season you make a plan, but you definitely have to do some course correction, because it's there's only so much then that data can tell you, and then in real time you do have to make corrections. So to begin with, for a season, before you make a plan for what needs to be done, you break it down into what has happened in the past. So for example, um, so I'll just touch base upon the few key activities that are being done in merchandising, and then if there are any questions about it, maybe we can have a discussion about it. So there are season strategies that are done in conjunction with the CEO, the strategy team, the Apex teams, and so every category makes a projection for themselves basis their past sales trends. I just heard a little bit of a notification of sorts. So is there something that is someone trying to? So for example, ethnic wear would have a different growth trajectory compared to menswear or compared to footwear, because the demand keeps changing for different categories, or for innerwear or sleepwear. Like for example, during the COVID times, during the lockdown times, sleepwear was one category that was shooting through the roof. That was selling like hotcakes, because people were staying indoors. They needed sleepwear more, loungewear and sleepwear more than anything else. So while the outerwear categories were in a negative growth path, or they were selling lower than what they have been selling in the past, sleepwear was double the business of what it was generally in the normal times. So similarly, you study the every merchandiser for their own category will study the trend as to the short-term trend as to what my category have been performing right now, and then the last year's similar season needs to be studied, because spring summer will behave similar to spring summer and not autumn winter, because the kind of colors, the kind of fabrics, the kind of product that will sell in autumn winter will be very different from spring summer. So if you have to make a plan and you have to suggest your buyer as to what fabrics to buy, what colors to go for, what size mix to go for, you have to study the uh, similar season. So for if we are making a strategy or a season plan for spring summer, you will study the previous spring summer season, and you will see that okay, I had launched these 200 styles in the season, and these were the top 20 sellers. These styles did average for me, and these styles were the bottom sellers. So taking directions or taking learnings and insights from the last season, we draw out a few results or insights for the buying and design team as to which direction to work in, because so design is very open, right? You can come up with many different designs, but only a few of them may hit with the customers, may become a hit with the customers, and to be able to predict that, you need to understand what kind of stuff has been a better seller for us, because it tells you uh, who is walking into your stores or who is browsing your websites. So e-commerce is a very different ball game, and brick and mortar retail is very different. In brick and mortar, there is very limited data available about the customers. Whereas in e-commerce, you can exactly see which page did they click first and what was the last page that they viewed before logging out or before dropping out of our website. So then you know that, okay, here the customer lost interest. So you can track the entire customer journey in e-commerce. It is a very vast and very data oriented business, e-commerce. Whereas in retail, majorly, you just have your sales data. So as to what's sold, if it's sold, it's good. If it didn't sell as we had expected, then you call it as average or below average. And the key parameters that generally are used to study styles performances are sell-throughs. So for example, if we bought 2000 units in a certain style, because and 3000 units in another, we are having a higher expectation from the style that was bought for 3000 units, right? Because if we only look at the absolute sales, it might be that the style that we bought for 3000 units sold say 200 units every week, and the style that we bought for 2000 units sold 150 units every week. So if we only look at the sale numbers, we might think that, okay, this one sold 150, this one sold 200. But if you look at a percentage of your expectation, that you expected to sell a total of 3000 in this one, so this one is at a 200 divided by 3000 ka sell through, and the other one is at a 150 divided by 2000 ka sell through. So the sell through of this one is higher, where we bought 2000 and we sold 150. So these calculations generally help with merchandise planning. And one very important thing that I would like to tell all of you, when we are in college, we don't really realize how much Excel is important in our work life, how much it is going to be important once you start working, because while unless you get into core profiles of design or visual merchandising or something similar, unless you are basically into a core design profile, Excel will be a very important tool that you would need. So if you are aspiring for any buying or merchandising or even sourcing profiles, so anything other than core designing, I would say get your hands on MS Excel, try and learn about pivots, pivot tables, and doing a few analysis on MS Excel. It will really help you, and it'll go a long way, because Excel is like the air you breathe once you start working. It's one of the major and important tools that comes in handy for studying data, for doing any analysis, presenting it to. It's absolutely acceptable in the corporates to present data using your Excel files. You don't always have to make a presentation. So that's one bit of advice from me for the for those of you who are interested in interested in becoming merchandisers or working in merchandising. Yeah. So that was about the first step of the season plan, which is understanding the previous season in terms of what worked for us, what didn't work for us. And after drawing those insights, then you have to make a projection for your category and compare it with the projection for the company. So, for example, the company is expecting to grow in this season over last year at a rate of 10%. Do you think your category will surpass the growth of the company, or will it be in line with the company? And then accordingly, you make a projection for your own category. And then you start to divide the money that, okay, If I'm going to do a sales of 100 crores, I currently have stock worth 40 crores, and taking a buffer of 10%, I need to buy another 70 crores of stock. And how am I going to spend this 70 crores? How am I going to spend it across the months of the season? How am I going to spend it across the different product categories? How many bottoms am I going to buy? How many tops am I going to buy? Within that, how many, say, short length, long length, which colors? Then all of those details will start to come in. And frankly, all of this is always teamwork. It's never just a planner sitting and doing the season plan alone. It is always in conjunction with the buying and sourcing teams as to how which of our suppliers can be relied on for if we are parking so much money for buying a certain product, do we have the vendors for that? Or because if it's just a plan, it's not going to draw any sales, it's not going to help. So you have to also understand the feasibility of what you're planning. Is the buyer having a different understanding of what they are seeing for other brands? And do they think that, no, maybe last season pajamas did well, but this season I think capris will be a better seller because I'm seeing more capris around, or because buying will also travel across the globe and trends do trickle down. So if you're seeing a trend in London right now, it's a general, uh, it has been a general trend that whatever uh, product trends or whatever fashion trends are seen across the globe, they do trickle across continents, across countries, and hence designers and buyers keep traveling to uh, the fashion capitals of Japan, England, and various other countries to draw inspirations and to see what's happening around the globe, so that uh, then we can also kind of amalgamate our own fabrics with those designs. You would have seen these fusion ranges that keep coming up, and it has been a big hit recently, where modern uh, modern silhouettes are blended with Indian prints, and it looks pretty nice, and it has been doing quite well for a lot of brands. So, sorry, yeah. Coming back to the merchandising processes. So we've analyzed the previous season, and then we've done a projection for the next season, and then we've broken it down into different months and into different products, and then you present it to or you discuss it with the heads in the company, the head of merchandising, the head of buying, and you present it to the CEO and you take their opinions, and that's how then it gets frozen, and then you start working on it. You start working with the vendors to develop the designs, and they start sending samples for fit sessions, and then for the final approvals, and then you start to place orders. So that's a short summary of merchandising, product merchandising. Is there something that I should elaborate in more detail, or is there something that I'm just taking a pause to understand it?
Ma'am, I just want to ask the question. Since because of this COVID and everything, what was like the toughest or something that you hurdled upon and you could pass through during this phase, especially during COVID?
So, Jessica, because of COVID, the biggest challenge was like I said, cash flow was a big question as to you have to, when you're running a business, you have to ensure that you have money to survive and you have money to pay to your, so your stores are on rent, you have to pay rent for that, you have to pay your employees, you have to pay to your vendors. So money management was one very big challenge as COVID set in. And also because, so if you are tightening your purse and you are telling your vendors that, hey, listen, I place an order of 1 lakh units with you, but I might not be able to buy all of the 1 lakh because I am not selling 20,000 pieces every month like I used to. Now I am only selling 5,000. So I only have the capacity to pay you for 5,000. So a lot of the vendors did understand that, but they also have their own chain of vendors or suppliers. They have their fabric and trim suppliers who they have made commitments to. Because the whole chain works like that, that you're given commitments to your suppliers. Your supplier has given commitment to his or her suppliers. And so, yeah, that was one very, it took about a month and a half to, get them to understand that please help us out as we won't be, even if we take that product from you, we won't be able to pay you right away. So it's anyway money blocked for you. So managing vendors, I would say, was a big challenge during COVID. And then as everything started to open up, there was a sudden surge in demand. It was like a 200% because people had been waiting to buy, to shop, because for I think a considerable amount of time, even online deliveries were not happening across. There were certain cities or any pin code would get blocked because if the cases increase beyond a certain point and it becomes a contingency zone, then the deliveries would stop. So once we battled through the first wave, there was a sudden surge in demand and there was no stock. There was demand, but there was no stock because the vendors can't make product at the push of a button. They need some time. And since our industry, fashion industry, is very much labor intensive, you need workforce to make product. You just don't need the fabric and trims. You need people who will make the product, and that takes time. And because of various reasons, a lot of the factory operators had moved back to their hometowns. So they were starting to slowly come back and resume work. For a very long time, there was demand, and retailers were not able to meet those demands because of a little bit of a gap in the supply side.
So we're all able to give or send out the product within the specific amount of time. Like if you all had maybe a 7 days to deliver or anything like that.
There was definitely a constant chase as to we were just pulling orders forward then that okay, if you were going to deliver this one in October, can you please try and give it to me by September, because I can't wait until then, I am running out of product. So it didn't go perfectly as needed, but yeah, we tried to chase orders and get everything as soon as possible within the resources that were available. I think
We
there's a
have
question.
a question for you. Yes. How is interactive technology being used in the retail merchandising sector?
Interactive technology, meaning are we trying to, as in interaction with the customers or real-time demand, building real-time demand into the retail merchandising bit?
Yes, yes, yes.
So I'll just try to rephrase the question. Is it, does it mean that we, for example, we get in touch with our customers and we find out that, okay, this is, for example, if they need a certain kind of Sure. Then how do we build it into the build it into our planning, product planning, and provide it to the customer? So if I share about how it's being done in trend right now, so there are some ranges. I'm sure you all are aware of Zara and its supply chain. Zara is famous for launching something new for refreshing their collections every 7 days, and it is called fast fashion. Similarly, there is something here in my company that I've seen where we make a small range, not sending it across all stores, but maybe just sending it to the Mumbai and Delhi stores and trying to capture in the nerve that's or the pulse of the customers as close to real time as possible. So if a certain song becomes the trending thing, then something around that, or if suddenly something starts to catch attention, then try to launch a range. So that needs to be done with very with your suppliers very close by, so that you don't lose time in sending and receiving samples. So it's basically cutting down the time in the different processes, like basically using things that are available, making it on a small scale, and trying to optimize on the time durations of approving the samples, of placing the orders as quickly as possible, and then trying to then get the delivery within say 7 to 10 days from these vendors. This is from a big business's point of view. For a small business, it's possible to keep building new vendors and be able to provide the same within a short span of time. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Just a request to all my fellow students, my classmates. If it's any question related to merchandising, selling, anything, if you'll have a doubt on, please put your questions in the chat box. I will read it out for ma'am, and she could answer your doubts. Ma'am, I would have a question. What do you think is the aspect for a successful retail merchandising, like from a personal point of view, not as from your team or the company?
I think for not only for merchandising, but for being a successful professional in any area, one mantra that I try to follow myself, and that I would want to share with all of you is always try and be a part of the solution. When you all start working, you'll realize there will be challenges day in and day out. There will be roadblocks, there will be pit stops. The one thing that will help you keep going forward is your unwavering morale to keep, finding solutions to these challenges and not be bogged down by it. That okay, because every challenge is basically an opportunity to innovate, and you all are creative people. You have a knack for innovation to come up with different new ways of solving a problem. So I think that's one quality that will take you a long way in any profile, actually, be it merchandising, be it designing profile. So always try and be a part of the solution, and do ask the questions, do try to explore the problem, do try to explore the challenge, but keep your focus on coming up with the solution, on being resourceful, on being enthusiastic about solving the problem.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question for you from Arundhati. It says, what aspects do the retail industry look for while hiring freshers?
So first and foremost, I think is your willingness to learn, because as you're starting out, you do have a skill set, but a lot of what you will have to do will be on the job training, will be through on the job training. You will learn from your peers, your teammates. I think first and foremost will be your willingness to learn. Uh, Definitely, what you bring to the table is important. Being a new joinee in the team, you bring a fresh perspective. You help people think and look beyond what they have been used to. So that is definitely one quality that people will look forward to. But a very important one will be your willingness and readiness to learn. What is the most important aspect of successful merchandising post pandemic? So,
Yeah.
Mandeep, post COVID, so the most important lesson that we all learned from COVID is nothing is permanent and we need to be flexible, because initially it was seen as something impacting China, and there have been similar viruses that have impacted China and other countries of the world, but they never really impacted India in such a big way. So uh, nobody was ready for this, but being flexible is what saved a lot of businesses. And if a business was not flexible enough, they did crumble, and a lot of businesses went out of, they had to shut stores, and it did impact their. So be it a fashion business, be it merchandising, everything is impacted by money. Money is the driving force for all of us, and being able to manage money in the best possible way is what this pandemic has really told us. So, uh, to chase orders when the demand comes up, to be able to control the buying, or to be able to control the orders when you're not able to sell. These this flexibility was one thing that we've all learned, that we just can't keep planning ahead for the next 2 seasons, for the next years to come in. We have to keep a little bit of a buffer, and we have to keep that relationship with the vendor alive, that, when I'm able to buy 120% of what I used to buy, you will get 120% of business. So a lot of this is dependent on the vendors and managing your relationship with them. Or is it possible for textile design students to have a career in merchandising? Definitely. Uh, there are a lot of my design friends who are now doing very good in merchandising. So, majorly for merchandising, you need to have a little bit of an understanding of numbers, of analysis, of an analytical bent of mind, so that one very strong point that all of you will have once you step into the business world is that you understand product, and that is what is required for problem solving. Your understanding of the product will help you decode what's going wrong with the product. If something is not working, it could be because the fit of this product is not correct, the fabric could have been better, or the fall of this product isn't so good. So sometimes, so merchandising is one area where you will also find people from IIMs, from management backgrounds, who are working alongside you. And one advantage that you will have over them is that you understand the product in detail. So the level at which you will be able to solve problems is going to be very different. So if something works or doesn't work, you will be able to understand the reason behind it, because you understand the product. And over the course of these 4 years, you would have also developed a knack of what particular purpose a particular kind of fabric serves or a particular kind of product serves. So yes, textile design students can also have a career in merchandising. Definitely.
Yeah, hi, Sonal. This is Bhavna.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, how well are the markets opening up, and what kind of job opportunities are now kind of, uh, sort of evolving for our students, and how well can they expect good possibilities of openings for them?
So, ma'am, the sentiment has definitely improved a lot in the last at least 4 to 5 months, and now the hirings have also. So, I'll be honest with you that for a year and a half, almost all major companies had a freeze on their hirings, and
Right.
now they are definitely opening up because the business is turning positive and it's swinging back to levels even better compared to the 2019 numbers that we were achieving. So yes, definitely it's looking positive. The hiring scenario is looking positive for students.
Okay. So our company is really doing new collections in the sense that, there's been a change in the overall view of how people are looking at collections. Now, sustainability seems to be the new buzzword, and, they're looking at a lot of other ethical practices and stuff. So are they also looking at a new approach in the entirety of, how they're retailing and merchandising?
The bigger companies are taking small steps towards these directions. They are launching cotton, which is been so organic cotton based products, which has not taken up a lot of so basically which has not hampered the environment a lot. And H&M I think is a very big example in terms of sustainability,
Right.
because they take back product and they give out a certain discounts to the customers, and then they recycle the product. So they are one big inspiration and example. And I think this is definitely a trend, because we as a company, and even when I talk to my friends in working in other companies in Aditya Birla, even in Flipkart, because the customers are now becoming focused on sustainability. So the retailers are also pushed to think in those directions. And because it is a little heavy on the cost side of the product, right now people are taking small steps, but I'm sure it's once the supply chain of sustainable products uh, becomes sturdy, becomes more robust, then it will be a big part of the ranges. Right now it is very limited. Right now it is a very limited part of the range.
Okay, right. Thank you.
I think we've kind of come close to the end of the session.
Okay. So towards the end, I would just like to formally close this session with a vote of thanks. I would.
We have a last question if we can take in the Q&A section.
Yes.
Sure.
Just a second. Yeah, we have a question from Rishika saying, as a fresher, what all software should we learn? How is UI or UX design software helpful in the fashion industry, as most of the companies are focusing on the UI UX software?
So when you say UI UX software, I guess you mean so in UI UX, one would be HTML, which is the web designing, and another one would be, I think, the Adobe packages. And so it is definitely a very big part. So when we talk about UI UX, what comes to my mind is my previous organization that was into e-commerce, where at least, so if we were a team of 40 people, at least 10 to 12 people were working on these UI UX software. So there is definitely a very big opportunity, and it is a very important skill set going forward, because graphic designing and UI UX is, so now with the advent of social media and like even Jessica mentioned, that selling through social media is becoming a very big thing. And to be able to do that, you need these softwares, you need to be handy with these softwares, and to create beautiful images, to create graphics. So yes, definitely this is, if you are good at it, it is a very strong skill for you, and it will definitely help you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else has any questions they could put up in the chat box? Okay, so I would like to formally close the session with a vote of thanks. Hence, I would like to give my heartfelt gratitude to our honorable guest speaker, Ms. Sonal Besan ma'am, for joining us today. And I would also like to thank our HOD, Mrs. Bhavna Chanana, the CRC department, and all our faculties and the IT team for putting this session together and helping us to know more about our industry. And a big thank you to all our students who have been part of this session today. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Sonal. Thank you, Sonal, for joining us today for the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
I'll get back to you in some time. Thank you so much.
Sure. Have a good weekend, everyone.